Hello everybody and welcome back to the Overlap Breakdown channel. As always, I'm joined by my co-host Umir, who's a professional football scout and analyst. And we're here today to find Liverpool the perfect striker. As we mentioned on this channel numerous times, we've been through sort of what Liverpool are looking, or what we think Liverpool should probably look to do moving forward. We think this is just our opinion, but we think that Florian Wirtz will actually play on the left wing and he will be coming inside. Milos Kerkez overlapping. We've got Salah, who plays better closest to goal. Frimpong tucking inside. And then we combine the three midfielders together, and then we've got the beautiful 2-3-5. Yeah. And if you look at this on paper, and we went through it name by name, it would look amazing apart from the striker. The two that they've been most concretely linked with, which is Alexander Isak, Hugo Ekitiké from Frankfurt. Just straight away, I want to ask you, what do you think the main characteristics are for an Arne Slot number 9 going into next season?
So I'm going to take Arne Slot's system into consideration, but also the players that they've got and sort of the stage of their career they're at the moment. And I think I have to look at Mo Salah to begin with, because Mo Salah, as brilliant as he is certainly getting older. And he's not the most active player in terms of defensive work. I think Wirtz has come in and he can pick up a lot of that load. He's a very intense presser and he's really great defensively from trying to win that ball up higher up the pitch. But I do think your number 9 needs to have that energy to kind of compensate a little bit for Mo Salah as he moves into, running less and contributing defensively less in his latter years, if you want to get the best out of him going forward.
Yeah.
In that case, you need somebody who can press well. You need somebody who can back press. So if the ball goes behind him, see if he can push on and press the opposition's, pivot players. You need somebody, in my opinion, who can lead a transition really well. Mo Salah, as he gets a little bit older as well, might not be able to carry that transitional quality all on his own. He might be there to finish and play those final passes. But if you can have a central dribbler, I think that's really good because it frees up spaces in the flanks. It attracts opposition players towards you in the middle. And then if they can then find a player, whether that's one of these marauding fullbacks or one of these sort of Florian Wirtz kind of players, contributing in that counter-attacking situation. Because we know that Arne Slot, he's not only a heavy possession coach, but he likes to play on these transition situations. Yeah. He likes to manufacture them in a way that De Zerbi often did as well. And I think a lot of his, some of the systems that we might see from him might resemble sort of a 4-2-4 anyway, in a similar way to what De Zerbi did as well. So if we're thinking about all of those things, the defensive work rate, the ability to carry, the ability to play a final pass on the carry, and then also the ability to put away the chances in the box as well. So you kind of need a complete forward, as crazy as it does sound. But you basically need somebody to get the best out of these players, in my opinion, because they're your star players, Salah and Florian Wirtz, while still retaining that general culture of the team as a hard-working, high-pressing, but also exciting team.
Yeah, no, beautifully said. I think one of the things you just spoke about heavily there, which is something that I spoke about, and we've mentioned it so many times now, which is this build-up shape that we've seen Arne Slot used last year with Luis Diaz as one of the false nines and Szoboszlai stood to the right of him, and sort of what their role is in this system. And their role is obviously to combine and connect between the phases. So if we're talking about a fullback here, instead of your striker pinning high, we're looking at him to actually drop into these areas, take the ball, pop it off, and the centre forward, the level of centre forward you need to be to do that, as Umir's just mentioned, alongside the pressing, the goal scoring, the chance creating for everyone around you, is of an elite standard. Liverpool have they've sort of generated this team where they don't have to, I think everyone in Europe is now looking for a pure goal scorer, and because their pure goal scorer is out wide, they can actually do a little bit more. You can think more creatively. I think people have messed around with the idea of playing Florian Wirtz as a 9. I've seen Salah as a 9 mentioned. I don't think I agree, but I think people are trying to find ways around, going for these big money strikers. And it's pretty interesting with Liverpool because they don't need a guy who can score 50 goals. That's probably not what their primary idea of looking for a striker is. And even though Alexander Isak can do that, he's also phenomenal in terms of dropping deep, picking the ball. His touch is crisp. He's got that carrying, brings others into play. He's got them long legs. Premier League proven, of course.
His dueling quality when the ball goes into
him
is really
out
strong
ball,
as well.
That's obviously another thing as well, being an out ball, being able to trap the ball, as we've mentioned numerous times when we're discussing strikers. And do you even want to analyse Alexander Isak? Because it's one of them where it's like, Newcastle don't really have to sell because they didn't sign anyone last window, and I think they are preparing a new contract for Alexander Isak.
I
Obviously,
think he's got 3 years still on it as well.
Yeah, I think they've got Champions League football now. So in Newcastle's point of view, they don't need to sell. And I think from his point of view as well, Isak, whilst he wants to win the big trophies, he's kind of on this journey a little bit where he's just won a trophy last season, and maybe he can become that cult hero that he wants to be. And I'm not sure how he feels about it, obviously, and I know Liverpool are chomping at the bit to get him, and they won't leave Newcastle alone with it, and they'd have to break the record again to get Isak. But in terms of what Liverpool want, there's never been a more fitting striker than Isak, which is really hard for Newcastle fans. But when a team's going around breaking the British record for transfers and signing 2 more players for 40 million, 30 million, then you have to look at it and go, there's a genuine possibility that they could come swooping. But yeah, do you even want to analyse his quality? It just seems.
Well, I want to talk about Isak more generally, and what it means for Liverpool if they do go with this as a strategy.
Yes.
Because I think Liverpool have been fairly, I would say sensible. It's not always sensible to spend less money, but they've been fairly, well reasoned with their money, and they've often been actually on a tighter budget over the last few years. But if we look back to sort of their initial rebuild and the rebuild that kind of started Klopp's ascendancy and all of the success that he did have, Alisson, record fee for his position if I'm not wrong. Van Dijk, record fee for his position if I'm not wrong. Mane and Salah, not huge fees, but fairly almost decent. Like Frimpong and Kirkes, very smart buys. And still like a decent amount of money. And that all happened in a fairly close period. It was obviously spurred by, in part, the Coutinho sale. This season, they've come off the back of winning trophies. They probably want to reinvest to stay competing. So, because it's been so many years, I think that they are trying to resemble that sort of rebuild. And I think when you do a rebuild, instead of signing a lot of players who are kind of raising the floor, for lack of a better term, sign a couple of players who are going to really push the ceiling and be there for 6-7 years. In that case, look, how much mileage have you got out of Van Dijk? How much mileage have you got out of Alisson? They've been the best in their positions, arguably, for 4 or 5 years. If that's the case, why not go for an Isak? Even if it's really expensive, if you think about the quality you can get out of a player like that, if he does stay fit for 5-6 seasons.
And returns European trophy, Premier League trophy,
So in that sense, I do think it's not outlandish for them to maybe want him and also to probably try and get him. If that does happen, I wouldn't be of the camp that thinks, look, they've spent too much money here and it is unsensible. This is the time for them to act big because this is their rebuild. And it sounds weird to say that because they've just won a trophy, but you can't wait for others to catch up to you, or you can't wait to fall off before you do reinvest in that way. So Isak, we know his quality. He's a brilliant player in all of these facets. He's very strong. And he's proven that in the Premier League. He's great at dueling. He's given Saliba, Van Dijk their own sort of problems in and around the halfway line. He can run in behind. He can float to the flanks with Wirtz or Salah coming inside. He can take a shot from the edge of the box. He's got a great box movement. He's got everything you want. The only last thing I'll mention about his quality is when he was at Sociedad, he was a bit of a hit and miss finisher, and he wasn't necessarily the most clean in how he would receive the ball. I think he was probably learning how to like understand his frame and how to put chances away without overthinking them. When you think of potential alternatives to Isak, you might be getting players who are
at that
sort
level.
Of the Isak at the end of Sociedad level. And I think that's sort of the names that we might mention going on into the video. That would be the alternative. But it's not to say that those players can't develop into very high level world-class strikers if they're not there already.
If you're enjoying the video and want more tactical analysis and podcasts, please press the subscribe button below and hit the bell to enable post notifications. Yeah, so we are going to move on from Alexander Isak, and again, no disrespect to Newcastle fans, but we had to talk about him because he is the premium option.
Yeah, and he's one of the best strikers in the world.
Yeah, there's that as well. Number 2 is Hugo Ekitiké from Frankfurt, who is exactly who we started talking about in terms of, is this Isak before the move to Newcastle?
I think he's closer.
Oh dear.
I think he's closer.
No, I'd agree with that. Yeah, I think I'd agree with that. So, Hugo Ekitiké is, people who don't know, one of Umair's favourite players to watch at the moment, and we've spoken quite openly about him. We was actually going to cover him in a single piece on this channel, but we think he's quite amazing for what Liverpool want, and he's almost a replica. I think when I was watching him, even in the season, I did actually call him an Isak Junior. I think he's an Isak 2.0. The way he plays, very big frame, leggy, very complete dribbler, carries a lot of transitions. And we actually had Tom Reynolds on the channel, who's the Frankfurt scout.
Shout out Tom Reynolds, legend of the channel.
Tom Reynolds, and he actually mentioned that their ability to generate sort of a game model which got the best out of Marmoush and Ekitike was to rely heavily on transitions and allowing the spaces. And something that Liverpool did a lot last season was sort of play 50-50. Can we pin you in? Can we actually go a bit longer? Can we break into the channels? Can we create counter-attacking opportunities? And we can actually see that here through Ekitike's long progressive carries. He has got massive clusters all over the ball, like all over the half. Like everywhere, left, right, central, into the box, into these narrow spaces on the box, into the 6-yard box. There's loads. And then we've got Hugo Ekitiké shot-ending carries, which are obviously carries that he's done himself, which are converted into his own shots, which show, again, a lot around the box, creating chances, facilitating chances. And in the Bundesliga this season, no player has actually had more touches in the opposition box than Hugo Ekitiké, which is showing sort of his experience in terms of handling being in the box. And there's a lot of question marks over his finishing, which you'll touch on later, but he's a player who's experienced outside the box, getting them there, but he's also a player who's had the most touches in there as well. Yeah. And yeah, as a player, he's one of the most unique players I've seen in a long time in terms of what he's good at and in terms of his general profile. And honestly, when you watch him on the pitch, you wouldn't expect him to move how he does, which is a very sort of light-footed carrying, but uses his size quite well. Really crisp touch on him, good in the air still, so he's still got that little bit of robustness in terms of using his size and his power. But can you please take it away and explain why clubs are probably lining up to spend potentially 100 million euros on a player like Ekitike?
Yeah, look, like you mentioned, I think he's incredible. And I don't know if this is in part because he's such a unique kind of player, unique profile player. I'm drawn into him even more so. But if I'm just trying to be completely objective and analysing the qualities that he does have, I think a lot of teams rely on their centre forward to link play as well as being good and dangerous inside the box. Now we'll get into talking about his XG and how well he finishes and stuff like that. But irrespective of that, he's brilliant at moving inside the box. He gets so many touches inside the box, so he can facilitate chances for himself, whether that's off of the carry or even in lower, deep set against lower deep set defenses. I think what stands out about him the most is, despite being really tall and despite seeming to be quite skinny, he's quite strong. He's very agile in the sense that he can, in terms of how he moves. I think sometimes his unorthodoxy makes fans and I assume some analysts, put off of a certain player because they think he's a little bit clumsy, but I don't think that's the case. And he's a really hard worker above anything else. Your number nines often, especially your really expensive number nines, there's a tendency for them to be players who think that, the goals have to run through them and they don't necessarily have to contribute to the rest of the game. He presses really hard. He makes very selfless, deep runs, very unique runs. They're not also very predictable. So it opens up spaces for his teammates, whilst the opposition centre-backs are kind of drawn out into zones that they don't want to play in. He can again float out to the flanks, and he's a really interesting and unique dribbler. For a player of his giant size, he often does a few step overs, he feints, and he can hit the byline or cut inside as well. The goal against Spurs in the Europa League semi-final really stands out because he receives the ball in big space, he carries it, he drops the shoulder, cuts inside, takes a shot from distance, and those are goals that you would think of a very talented young winger, for example, to pull them off. So I think his general completeness is why a lot of teams are drawn to him. The fact that he can get goals, he's very selfless in terms of his hard work and his assisting of other teammates, and also his big frame allows him to hold defenders off and bring everyone else in. So he's a very unique player. I would implore everyone to just go and watch some footage from him more than anything. As much as we can describe him, I don't think you can really get a strong appreciation for his on-ball quality without watching him. Obviously, we can explain the off-ball quality, but his on-ball quality is is very, very unique and wildly impressive.
Yeah, and to kind of give you an idea as to how much of a facilitator he is in general, he did score 15 goals out of 31 starts in the Bundesliga last season, but he had 8 assists, which for a striker is like rare, very rare. That's like a winger, goal-scoring winger number, them numbers. And he's also got 44 chances created from open play in games started as well, 31. So we're looking at a player who's a lot more than a goal scorer, which is kind of probably more close. So probably closer to what Liverpool want in terms of the number 9 doing this stuff. I'm looking at Isak, and he is a very mobile and bouncy forward where he kind of runs around everywhere, runs the channels really well. But Ekitike's got a lot more experience in terms of dropping deep and actually doing that. I think Isak's a little bit more of a pure nine, like a truer 9. And I think if Liverpool went for Ekitike and he was to play somewhere like here, playing on the counter-attacks, getting the ball spinning, running channels, carrying the ball, having obviously Wirtz and Salah around him to combine, I think, I'm not going to say he'd gel better, but I think bang for your buck, I think you probably get a better sort of facilitator and overall team player out of him in terms of probably half the price as what you'd have to pay for Alexander Isak. And I want to show you here, I've got Ekitike's roles played by Opta Analyst. And as we can see, we've got their most common shapes played in possession. So each one of them, we've got a 3-3-2-2, a 4-2-2-2, and a 4-2-4. So each of them, all of them, play 2 strikers, sort of split strikers in their in-possession shape, which almost shows Ekitike's experience with playing with someone in such close proximity to him on the last line. And I think that's something that Liverpool have done a lot this season. It worked really well this season. It won them the title. So I don't think Slot is going to overhaul sort of way they build up in terms of the shape. And I'm looking at, he's actually experienced with playing someone next to him. And obviously it was Marmoush for a brief period, but he will now have someone maybe like a Wirtz or Salah, God knows who it may be. But I think generally, in terms of translating, even though it's a steep fee and a lot of people, again, will look at the numbers, go, if he's only scored 15 goals, how can he be worth 80 million? His general package play, his general overview of what he can do on the football pitch is incredible. His skill set is so varied. And I think, again, as you were saying there, he's not a 6'5" player who doesn't know how to use his size. He knows how to use his size. He's physical enough. He's fast enough. He can score headers in crowded boxes. And I think the last thing we'll probably say on Ekitike, which I wanted to ask you about in particular, was the concern that he's not a good finisher. I think some of his underlying numbers suggest that he should be scoring more for the chances he's getting given. Now, for me, I actually got a friend's Y-Scout, and I went and looked at all of his shots in the Bundesliga this season. And while some of them were scrappy, I didn't really notice a bad finisher. I noticed someone who can hit the ball very, very true, very pure. I think he's actually got quite an array of finish, quite a lot of different finishes, both feet especially. And I think he's a player who likes to take one-touch pop shots in the box. And yeah, I was a bit concerned as to why his numbers felt like that. Do you have any sort of justification or anything for his expected goals, maybe looking to the raw eye, to the naked eye, as quite drastically underperforming?
So 2 things. First thing I'll mention is with XG underperformance, it often differs between models. So there was one model, I think, that's been referenced particularly on social media, where he's underperforming XG by, I think, 7 goals.
Yeah. To put it into context, before Umair carries on, his expected goals via Opta is 21.6, and he's got 15 goals, so he's got 6.6 underperforming in terms of the data that we're using, in terms of the data that we have. So yeah, carry on, but just putting that into context.
Yeah. So for example, Opta's model, that they're putting him around about 7 goals underperformed, whereas there's other models where he performs it by I think less than 3. Yeah. So it's still an underperformance, but the disparity changes by model, and you'd have to go and understand the model and what it takes into account to truly appreciate that. Aside from that, obviously there is an underperformance, so it's important to break that down. Mm-hmm. I think this is his first major season playing as that sort of main number 9 in senior football, where he's being fairly prolific and playing at a high level. In doing so, I think there are some situations where he's getting the ball a lot in areas that would generate a high XG, such as the 6-yard box. The stat that you mentioned earlier was, I think was he top for touches in the box?
Yeah, touches in the opposition box. Yeah,
exactly. So he's getting a lot of chances in this sort of zone. A temperament thing about him is that he takes shots very frequently. He's a shift and shoot player, whether that's sort of edge of the box or inside the box. He likes to play like a striker, and although he's very selfless and he gets players involved, if he sees the opportunity to try and get a shot away, he will. For a player of his size, he's got very quick feet. and he can get shots away quite quickly in the box. So if you're taking shots from this area, they're going to be high XG chances regardless. And he does that frequently. So I think there's a case of him, because he's able to get the shot away quickly, it's almost stat padding his XG up.
Inflating it.
Even if there are chances that perhaps you wouldn't expect your striker to always score.
Yes.
When I'm trying to assess him more globally in terms of his finishing quality, there's a wide array of finishes, like you mentioned. Both feet, running in behind, sort of edge of the area, long shots. He's got a very interesting toe poke on him. I've not seen many strikers utilize the toe poke as a finish, but it's a really good finish. And years ago, some strikers used to do it a little bit more often. It's not a skill that we see too much more. Aguero used to do it a lot. Yeah, he's a great mention actually. And that kind of catches keepers off guard as well. He's got a dink that he likes to use as well. I think I've seen him try it on both feet as well. So the fact that he's quite expressive, he can get a lot of those chances put away. I wouldn't worry too much about his XG underperformance because it shows me that he's getting in those good chances and he's still contributing with 8 assists as well. So for me, he's kind of got the complete package. I think with XG trends, you kind of need to see a few seasons to really understand if that's his level and what his level kind of really is. But I've seen enough variety in his finishes to kind of be assured that this one season sample is probably not reflective of what might happen in latter parts of his career.
I was just thinking then, I think if you look at kind of Luis Diaz was playing there as the sort of the number 9 or whatever, I was just thinking like how much XG would he add to the actual team if they just had a tall striker in the box there? And I think you'd probably get generally more chances for Liverpool than he would get for Frankfurt.
His box movement is brilliant as well.
I know Frankfurt play a little bit more on transition, and maybe that's where he excels a little bit more. But I'm looking, if he plays for Liverpool and he's playing for Frankfurt, he's going to get more chances. And even though he might underperform, if he gets 20 goals in the Premier League and still contributes 8 or 9 assists, I mean that's a world-class return.
Well, I always think to Raheem Sterling, and he would underperform his XG, but we'd still score 20, 22 goals a season. Whereas you compare him to a player like Jack Grealish, they're not getting in the positions and they're not taking the shots to underperform their XG. So even if, for example, they're better finishers based on the chances that they get, they're not getting those chances to score 20 goals. They're scoring 3, 4, 5 goals. And that raw difference in number warrants and is more beneficial than being an overperformer of XG all the time.
Right, thank you very much for watching. If you did enjoy, please don't forget to like, comment and follow the channel. And we'll be back next week for some more analysis. Thank you.